Hello, welcome to the Wednesday Brunch Podcast. Menu, please. This is your host, Jaden.
Water, please. This is your co-host, Ryan.
Today on the menu, or our schedule today, we have a special interview from my grandfather, Brian Hamlin, beekeeper for over 40 years, who's going to share some interesting insights into beekeeping and the environment. As well, we have a special new segment called Interesting Facts by Google, and we have a special segment from Ryan.
And the segment you guys hear every week, it's Love It, Hate It, Why?
So Ryan, before we jump into our interview, what have you been up to this week? How have you been doing?
How have I been up to? So this week, I'm kind of excited today because a new game just came in from Amazon. And it's on my
Very
table.
fun.
And I'm just waiting to play it.
What's the game?
It's still Pokemon, but it's Pokemon Sword. I finally got hold of it, and Sophie's gonna be pretty happy.
For all the people that follow that genre of games, I bet they would be excited too, even though I don't know the difference really. I know that there is two games and they do that, but who knows? That's not
It's been out since November, but I finally got my hands on it because I could finally afford it.
Oh, that's good.
But I'm kind of in the red right now, so we'll see.
Yeah, but you'll climb out of it eventually, definitely. Yeah. For me though, it's been a very relaxing week. I've done some homework. I've actually started doing schoolwork again, just because it's my last week officially. So I just want to finish it off with a bang, getting some stuff in, and just kind of feeling the completionist attitude, I guess you could say.
Keisha's not gonna be happy with that.
I already emailed a bunch of them. I emailed my English teacher and a photography teacher and just told them, that's it, I'm done now. And they're like, okay. Well, it's nice. And basically they said, okay. They were just like, okay, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy. Good luck in your endeavors in life.
Yeah, make sure to visit them once in a while.
Yes,
maybe
I will.
A couple times a week. Well, not a couple times a week, but a couple times a month.
You could do that, but I can't because I'm going to be in a different city, so
oh yeah, that's
it's tough for me to come back very often.
Come back for Christmas.
Of course. I have to come back for Christmas. It's a great time to be home. Home for the holidays.
Hey Jane, as your last year, how do you feel right now?
Oh, it's intimidating sometimes. The closer it gets to the day that I actually leave, I'm a little bit damn, this is an entirely new life for me. I'm gonna be living in a new city alone, basically. It's starting a new chapter. It's cool though. It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you feel lonely, just feel free to just reach out to anyone.
Yeah, I definitely will. It's something I'm gonna definitely need when I'm grinding at the University of Waterloo on those cold days.
And like I said, always join a club. Find a couple. So I would go to a bunch of meetings for whenever the first meeting is. Just go to a bunch of them and choose the one that sticks with you the most.
Okay.
And plus, in those first meetings, you'll probably meet other friends as well. Although you might not be part of the clubs, they might be part of other clubs that you joined as well.
That is true. I never think of that. The only thing is, with online, I don't know how they're going to be doing that with clubs.
All right, that's true. But most likely, it's going to be Discord meetings or something similar.
Probably. We'll see how it works out.
Yep. Here's a tip: the geeky clubs tend to be a lot more tech savvy, so they'll be doing having a lot more fun.
That makes sense. Yes, definitely. Well, it's time for our interview now. So please enjoy listening to my grandfather talking about beekeeping.
The first question I have for you today is, why are you passionate about beekeeping?
Because beekeeping's taught me many things, especially connections with nature and cycles of nature through observation of what the honeybees are doing. From a young age when I started doing it, more of a connection to nature, because I'd be observing what plants were ready to be pollinated, when in the spring which plants were first starting to come out, dandelions, willow, that sort of thing. So it connected me in that regard to nature. Just observing what the bees were doing and then what was happening in nature at the same time.
Okay.
The second question I have for you is, how is the taste and the characteristics of honey affected by climate and environment? what does it tell you about where the honey is from?
Climate does to some extent, but it's more of a seasonal affecting, meaning that in the spring there's certain things that come out that affect and influence the honey. And then later there's other things, for example, goldenrod, it makes the honey amber and it has more of a caramel flavor. You know, those are things that the climate that we live in affect, but it's more not climate as much as seasonal. Yeah. So spring honey would taste different to some extent than fall honey, just because they're two different sources of things that the bees are gathering.
Exactly. The next question I have is, how has technology changed and influenced beekeeping? What are some of the new challenges and advantages?
Well, technology with beekeeping is probably started 150 years ago by making hives where you could remove frames, you could reuse those frames from year to year. Prior to that, beekeeping, which has been done globally for thousands of years, was where you would actually take out the honeycomb and generally take the bees' habitat away from them, and then they'd have to rebuild that habitat. So technology, as I mentioned 150 years ago, was where you could use removable frames that could be put back into the hive, meaning that the bees didn't have to make a honeycomb every year, which is very labor intensive for them. They could focus more on honey production.
And again, some of the challenges, like let's say today, because there is new...
Challenges today again are mostly environmental, because a lot of the habitat has been taken away for development of housing, urban development, etc. Challenges also are the way things are farmed, because a lot of bees are in settings in the country where farming takes place, agriculture, and so modern agriculture is often using pesticides, herbicides, and they have a major effect on honeybees, but also all pollinators.
The next question I have is, how can someone support local beekeepers and bees?
Well, supporting beekeepers would be to support your local honey that's produced by locally, and that helps the local beekeepers. It also has the benefit of when you're using local honey, it's more medicinal for you if you have breathing allergies, because you build an immunity through the honey, because what people are generally allergic to is what the honey is composed of, the pollens and the nectars from the plants.
So the last question I have here, what does a year in the life of a beekeeper look like for you, and what are some of the tips you can give to people who want to get involved with beekeeping?
Well, beekeeping here, again, it's a cold climate, so beekeeping is somewhat seasonal, and I personally am not a large beekeeper. I tend to keep between 10 and 25 hives, so therefore my focus in my beekeeping is usually from end of April until November. After that, it's too cold for the bees to fly, and there are no flowers, so they're not gathering and making honey. The importance, though, of honeybees is their connection to pollination. And again, a large part of our food supply is directly affected through pollination. And now I'm talking about honeybees, but all pollinators are very important for the work that they are doing to support the environment. Even though, like when I started out as a beekeeper, I wasn't thinking of pollinators in general. I was living in the bush thinking about, I can make honey. And that's something that I eat, something that we can use. Live in the bush, there's beautiful plants that the bees can gather from. So when I first started, I wasn't thinking the same way I was as when I got the hives and I started observing them. Once I started observing them, that was a whole understanding their culture and whatnot, and seeing what they're actually doing, that changed me. So it was like I evolved from the idea of beekeeping or bees to actually the reality of what they are doing,
Right. Okay.
the important work.
Makes sense.
If people do want to get involved in beekeeping, though, especially if they live in an urban environment like Toronto, there's an Urban Toronto Beekeeping Association, and they welcome all people to come just to learn about what beekeeping is and learn about what urban beekeepers are doing as well. And there's also a student group at the University of Toronto, U of T Bees. They keep hives on a couple of rooftops on campus, and they also offer tours of their hives in the summer and whatnot. This year being different because of COVID, so not likely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they put on a lot of the university students themselves are pro-education around what they're doing, their club and beekeeping. So they do talk about protecting habitat of bees and promoting awareness of pollination.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for coming to this interview today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and listening to you.
Why, thank you.
Okay.
So again, I'd like to thank my grandfather for the wonderful interview and the wonderful insights into beekeeping that he gave us. Ryan, so what did you think of the interview?
Well, first of all, your grandfather sounds so young. How old is he actually?
He is turning 70 this year. No, he's not actually. I think he's turning 69 this year.
Oh, he's still pretty young, like for a
He
grandpa.
is still pretty young. He is a young grandpa. Yeah.
So his farm is around 25 hives, right?
Yeah, he has about 25 hives around different areas. So he has a couple in Toronto. He has a couple over here in Peterborough area. He doesn't have as many as he used to. He had 4 or 5 apiaries, so bee places, basically where the hives are in Toronto.
And that's
Now he
considered
has
small.
2. Yes, very small. Some beekeepers have hundreds of hives just in one location. So
Oh, so it's sort of like a honey factory.
exactly, it's a commercial industry in that
Mhm.
case.
Yeah, his views about trying to get into beekeeping, I feel like it's definitely a great way to find your passion, especially joining groups or just
Exactly.
doing research. For example, universities have so many clubs that you could join, and you could really find the hobby you want specifically.
I can speak to that definitely as a photographer. That's something that inspires me. I found that passion just by looking,
Mhm.
and I guess that's the kind of the same lesson that he's giving in his talk about finding that part of that passionate.
And I really find it interesting how it's more seasonal than it is climate-wise for the quality of the honey.
Yeah, and that's because he was mentioning, since it's cold here, like let's say in Australia, that's completely different. It's warm there most of the year. And
Yep.
It's a tiny bit cold for winter, but same with any other places like south. They really have a different.
Yeah, especially I remember that honey from Japan. Over here, the honey is a bit more viscous. Over there is really runny and warm.
That's because of solidification. So the honey solidifies, it cools down, it gets harder.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact scientific process of that, but that is what happens in this climate. when it
Mhm.
comes to honey.
But yeah, like
Anything
you
else?
your grandfather has been doing this for how many years? 40?
46 now.
46.
So,
So he
46
was
years.
around he was still in his teens, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah.
when he started.
Man, I find it really, really inspiring when a person can do the same thing for 40 something years and still find fun in doing it, because many things get just really monotonous. For example, some football players, I guess, or as an example, maybe they've been playing for 20 years and they just can't find fun anymore, especially if they go competitive, because
Yeah.
that atmosphere is all about winning.
That does make sense.
Yep.
It's an interesting thing that you can keep doing that for so long. I hope that I could still do photography. And let's say 46 years. Like that's gonna be something inspiring.
Yeah, it definitely will be.
Powerful story to tell.
Yeah, because people's interests just change over time as people just become older.
people grow and change. That's a part of life.
Mhm.
One thing I forgot to ask him about is the murder hornets. My thoughts on those, though. I don't really have much. I haven't been following it, but have you kind of heard anything about them? Because I feel like it's gonna change people's perception. They're gonna be a little bit more afraid of bees again.
Yeah, it definitely will. I haven't heard too much about it because, like I said, it's been a bit overshadowed by our current situation.
Well, everything, yes.
Yep.
There's a lot to overshadow that.
Yep, there's a lot going on right now.
Funny enough, it's the least of our worries, I guess you could say.
So, do you know around what areas the murder hornets were around?
I know that they're in the United States.
Yeah.
I feel like I heard some stuff. They're coming to Toronto. Like there's a little bit like there's maybe not Toronto, but like Southern Ontario area. There was a little bit of talk about that, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so it's mainly an American problem, but since we are just on the border, it's definitely plausible that they could come over here, but I don't think that's something we should be too worried about.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's gonna be hard for them to reach over here, especially with Canada's low population density. We should be like pretty fine.
Should be, yeah. Well, let's get moving on to our next segment, I think. So, if you're interested in getting some of our products, this year we can't really sell at most events, but usually in Toronto we do a couple events throughout the year, some winter events related to Christmas or big shows we do occasionally. This year it will be different, but we are working on a website. I'm working on a website because my grandfather isn't the most tech-savvy person, but hopefully one day we will be able to sell our honey and the beautiful beeswax candles he makes, which is something.
Welcome to the Fast Fact segment. So I'm going to give you a fact. I'm going to talk about a fast fact, Ryan, and then we'll just discuss it. So this is what we got here on Google. I just typed this in, and it gave me this prompt to press a little button. When did the original Little Mermaid come out? If you didn't know, it came out November 14th, 1989. The Little Mermaid is an animated film produced by Walt Disney Feature Animation and first released on November 14th, 1989. The 28th animated feature in the Disney animated feature canon, this film is based upon the Hans Christian Andersen short story, The Little Mermaid. Did not know that. Very interesting.
Yeah, the animation really holds out.
Yeah, when you look at it, it's surprising, that it came out in '89. Some of the animation.
I mean, I guess it's pretty close to 1990 because that's when the style started looking more like that. Especially, like for example, the Iron Giant looks pretty similar.
The Iron Giant, yes, that is a nice style. So Ryan, your fast fact of the day.
So the first fast fact is about a country. So Jane, do you know what the largest island country is?
Greenland.
Well, the actual country is Indonesia.
Really?
And it is 735,358 square miles across or wide, or 1,900,000 kilometers.
That sounds very right.
Surprisingly, it is. You would expect it to be something like Greenland, right? But the country, it looks quite small.
Yeah. Is that because it's spread out about a bunch of islands? Is that why it's so technically so big?
I guess so, because I guess they took those islands at some point and it just expanded bigger than Greenland. It's a huge mix of different islands. It's an entire region.
Interesting. This is why we put candles on top of birthday cakes. For the people that do that, some believe that the tradition of birthday candles began in ancient Greece when people brought cakes adorned with lit candles to the temple of Artemis, goddess of the hunt. The candles were lit to make them glow like the moon, a popular symbol associated with Artemis. Did not know that. It's funny that things really are connected to the ancient Greeks like that. You don't really realize how much stuff relates to them.
Yeah, they really gave us a lot. But, today, when you see the Greek symbols, you tend to quake in fear because it's usually math.
Exactly, yeah.
So my next fact is a pretty interesting one. So apparently armadillos are slightly bullet resistant. because in 2015, a man found an armadillo on his
Right.
property and shot it 3 times. And one of the shots bounced off and hit him in the jaw. It ricocheted off of
Wow.
the hard shell. This was a man
I
from
was gonna
Texas.
say, like, shooting armadillos, that just sounds like an American thing. No disrespect to our cousins from the South, but I can't hear or see an American doing that. No, Canadian, sorry, doing that.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
Texas.
It's even more American. Land of the proud and the strong, the free people. Okay, let's see what else Google gives me today. Who said if you love your job, you never work a day in your life? Choose a job you love and you will never work a day in your life. I don't know this person. Confucius once said, if this is true, one of America's giants of jazz, trumpeteers, singer Louis Scatamo Armstrong never worked a day in his 40-year musical career. So it sounds like they're saying that this a jazz musician created the phrase, you never work a day in your life if it's something that you love, because he was a musician. Which is interesting, you know? Yeah, it looks like he's a jazz player. That's what they're saying.
I would have never expected that phrase from a
Well-
musician. Maybe an
I would say artist, but I think artist does make sense, because, like, that's a very, like, passionate thing that you do. Okay, Ryan.
So my next fact is about Canada. Do you know what the lowest recorded temperature is?
Minus 50.
Minus 50
Yes.
Celsius. Well, in 1947, on February 3rd, in a small town called Snag, Yukon, it was recorded that they had a temperature of negative 63 degrees Celsius, or negative 81.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's actually the average temperature on
Whoa.
Mars.
Damn, that is freezing cold. Wow.
Yep, small
That's
town in
very
Yukon. One of the
very-
coldest places in this
You would
country.
think Antarctica would be colder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would think so, right? But there are really huge freak in nature moments
Right. Yeah.
in time.
Well, I think, how many did we go? Is that 4 fast facts? I think so. I think I got one more.
That's fine.
What percentage of Australia is a desert? Australia contains the largest desert region in the southern hemisphere and high portions around, make a guess.
60%.
Very close. It's 70% of this continent is arid, arid or semi-arid, which makes sense to me. When I went to Australia back in 2016, I think, you know, you realize when you're on the coast, it's very green, and then as soon as you go farther inland, you can kind of see the continent and the country changing into this, like, desert land. It's interesting.
Does Australia also have like savanna type
Yes,
fields?
they do, I believe. I didn't see that really, but I think so. I know there's a lot of green lush, and then it kind of just changes though. It's interesting.
The land of the huge insects and crazy
Yes,
animals.
Indeed. Nice place though.
So my final question, or my final fact is, Jane, can you guess the national sport of Japan?
Ooh, snowball. Yes.
Snowball? Elaborate.
Well, I was watching this documentary about this guy. He was going through Japan, and he was up in the northern Japan, and he was playing snowball. It was a competitive sport, so I was just thinking, I'm just gonna assume that it's that, but what is it?
It's sumo.
Okay. That makes more sense than snowball.
No, it's. I mean, they consider it their national sport. Others might consider it martial art.
That does make sense.
But the most popular sport in Japan is surprisingly baseball.
Really?
Yeah, it's not too surprising for me because the Japanese people I've met, some of them have actually played baseball, and they have a lot of them tend to have a passion for it.
It's very interesting.
I wonder what Canada's favorite sport is. It's
I think
definitely
it's hockey
right?
or lacrosse. It's one of those two. Well, thank you for tuning into our fast facts or our interesting facts on this week of the Wednesday Brunch Podcast. Next up, we have Ryan's segment, I think. It's going to be our standard little thing that Ryan goes with most weeks.
So I'll give an explanation. So my segment is called Love It, Hate It, Why? So I give one word, and the other person must reply either they love it or hate it, and then I will ask why. And then they will give me a one-word explanation why they either love it or hate it. And this can be any word that I just think of in any coming second. But today I have a list.
Let's play.
Alright, so I will start the timer, and we will be given, I guess, 2 minutes
Sounds good
today.
to me.
We'll start in 3, 2, 1. Speakers.
Love them. Music.
Why? Staplers.
Love them. Loud.
Why? Yeah, they do make a
Indeed.
satisfying sound. Monitors.
Love them. Information.
Guns.
Whew. This is a tough one. I'm gonna say hate them just because there's only one purpose to them, and that's to kill something. Yeah.
That's true. Medicine.
Love it.
Why?
I would say save lives, but in one word I would say good.
Awards.
Love it. Achievement.
Why?
Love
Markers.
Writing.
Bloom. Camera
Camera
bloom.
bloom. Ooh, love it. It's just got.
Why?
I can't do it. How do I do it in one word? Interesting, because it makes an interesting effect.
Exercise.
Healthy.
Why? Xbox.
Love it. I would say
Why?
gaming.
Dictionary.
Love it. Words.
Math.
Love it. Language. Like in the sense of the universe. Like that's how you understand this. How everything works basically. Love
Drawing.
it. Relaxing.
Why? Rocks.
Love it. Earth.
Why? Today.
Love it. Podcast.
And that concludes our 2 minutes. You answered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
How many
14.
were there?
14 out of
Oh,
20.
that's really.
14 out of 20. You had 6 left. We'll save those for
Okay.
next time. But that's a pretty good time.
I'd say so.
So a little interesting thing. Like I want to hear your stance on Bloom.
Bloom. Well, camera. When you look at it, like I like making the effect because it's like this, like overall, like it's a little bit like sometimes over the top. But as a photographer, cinematographer, I do enjoy seeing this kind of like the light. Light is a beautiful and important part of photography. So when you see like these streaks and this style of photography and videography, it adds something. Like normally, like if you're gonna do, it depends on what you're shooting. Like if you're doing let's say an interview with someone, you wouldn't want bloom. That's just distracting. But if you're doing something like dramatic, then I think bloom's okay. That's my own. What do you think about it, though?
And quickly for our viewers, could you explain what Bloom is?
Let's see. I don't know it's hard for me to explain like actually, but I know what it looks like. Let me just find it. The actual.
Like if I have it right, it's something to do with sun rays or lighting.
It's when, let's see, so this is the one I got a definition here. Bloom is a post-processing effect, so that's if you add it after, but it can be done in camera as well. An image artifact or real-world cameras. The effect produces fringes or feathers of light extending from the borders of bright areas in an image, contributing to the illusion of extremely bright light overwhelming the camera, capturing the scene. So basically, it's just like, it's in a sense backlit, but it's nice.
Mm-hmm. But it can also come from the front.
But I mean, when you think about, let's say if you're inside and there's a window and you're shooting facing the window, your subject's going to be backlit, so that's going to create a similar effect as blue, basically. Camera fact
Okay.
for the day. Has there anything interesting this week you've learned about, right? Or heard about?
Interesting things I've
Yeah,
learned
because
about.
they are opening the province, I heard. That's a good thing. You can finally get a haircut. A very exciting thing.
Well, traveling to Quebec for a haircut is not exactly within budget.
Yeah, but you can
right
come
now.
to Peterborough, actually, because it's just like outside of the city. You can go. Once you leave Toronto.
But I feel like there's this loyalty with your
Yeah.
barber, so it's kind of that you kind of have to you're obligated to keep.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but still, like, a lot of people, I think they would take the trip outside of the city just to get a haircut. Because right now, my hair is
it's
too
true.
much for me. Too much here.
Yeah, right now I've just been cutting the sides
Mhm.
alone or by
Yeah.
myself. Man, it makes such a
It
mess.
really does.
Gotta respect barbers, how they keep the place so clean.
Exactly. They really do a lot to, like, make sure. Because, like if you think about it, like, you don't realize how much hair you really have until it's, like, you're doing it yourself and you're like, wow, that's a lot of hair coming off my head there.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I think that's enough for today. It's been a pleasure talking to you as normal, Ryan. Thank you for tuning in
It's been a pleasure talking
to
to you.
the Wednesday Brunch Podcast.